thank you for coming out today. I'm Anita Collins, and I'm glad to see some familiar faces, but I'm also seeing some new faces. So is anybody here for their first time at a user group meeting? Okay. Okay, so it's been so crowded, I guess. Okay, well, that's great. Well, I will very, very quickly run through the purpose of these meetings then, because you guys already know. So they're deep dives into hot topics. Just remember that if there's something that you're interested in hearing about, I would love to know, and we will try to build a meeting around it. So just send your ideas to me, or to Vicki. Would be glad to get them as well. Again, this is your chance to ask questions. So you can ask questions about the topic of the day, but also ask any other questions that you're wondering about. They're open to anyone who uses Connect Carolina, and so please encourage your coworkers to come. So, okay, so the deep dive topic for today is hiring and return from short work break. So again, Megan is going to cover our first two topics, which are return from short work break, and then fiscal year 2016 department changes. And then Corey Mims is here to talk about the most meetings, which the first one was focused on hiring an EPAR, so she'll explain what those are and share some of the insight that we got from those meetings. And then I'm going to come up for just a few minutes and talk about some new things that we've developed for HR on this, in the training area. Also wanted to just mention that we do record these meetings. So I have a mic on, but it's only to project on the webinar. So we do actually have 5 people joining on the webinar, so which is great. So welcome those joining online. But that also means that these meetings are recorded. So if you want to go back and look at something that we covered in the past meetings, they are on the website. So what's the name of the website? Yes, okay. CC Info is where we try to put all the information. So we have a resources page out there. There's a webinars page, a user group page. So do go out there and check if you're curious about past meetings that we've had. So, okay, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Megan.
Am I good with sound? Good morning, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Megan Keith. I'm the Senior Business Analyst and Team Lead for the HRBAs, and I'll talk to you a little about returning students from short work break since we're getting ready to start processing for the fall semester. So I can't say this enough. We continue to see lots and lots of issues around the expected job end date. We had a ticket coming just this week that was related to something else and happened to notice that the expected end date's a day off. So if the hire date is effective 6/24 and you want to appoint the person for a year, what would you use for the expected job end date? Yay! You guys got it. The one that came in this week, the expected job end date was 6/23, so that poor person's going to get shorted a day of pay if that doesn't get fixed before they terminate. So can't say it enough. So expected job end date's required for EPA students. The expected job end date is going to be the first day of their terminated status. Wanted to mention again that we do have that expected job end date report available in InfoPort. Have most of you seen that? Yes, we'd like you to use that as much as possible. And really important, you need to get the actions to reappoint or put the student out on short work break or terminate them. And this applies to everybody, not just to students, but prior to that expected job end date coming up in the system. So there's an issue with Connect Carolina where once that expected end date hits, you can't do anything on them anymore. So if you wait until after the expected job end date, you're going to have to put in a ticket and the BAs are going to have to handle it manually. Let's talk about expected job end date and pay. So unlike in EPA Red, the expected job end date does not stop pay automatically in Connect Carolina. You do need to enter a termination and or a short work break action. And on the other side, now that we're getting ready to bring students back from summer break for the fall semester, you need to do a return from work break action on them to restart pay. Again, those actions have to be done prior to the expected job end date. And want to really advertise, where'd Beverly go? Beverly Wyrick from the graduate school has kindly offered to host the stipend calculator on the grad school's website. We highly recommend that you use that so that we're sort of using a consistent way to track how we're doing pay for grad students across campus. So basically, the stipend calculator, you'll go in, you'll put in the stipend amount, number of days in the semester, and it'll tell you how much you enter for compensation for the student. All right, so returning students from short work break. So the schools and divisions are responsible for returning any students from short work break who are returning for the fall semester. You need to get those actions in the system prior to the MO2 August payroll data entry deadline, which is August 17th this year. And then sometime probably mid-September, we haven't finalized the timing on that yet, but we'll go in and do auto terminations for anybody who you haven't returned from short work break. So say you have 10 grad students in your unit and 8 of them are returning, 2 of them are not. You need to bring the 8 back. If you want to go ahead and do terminations on the 2, you're more than welcome to do that, or you can just leave them out there on short work break and we'll go ahead and auto term them for you in September. Really, really important, you have to do a return from work break action to bring somebody back from short work break. If you go in on the job change form and just do a reappointment and don't add the return from work break action, they're not going to get paid. Really, really important. We've already had a couple of issues with that around people who went out on short work break at the end of the semester and then they ended up coming back and being employed for the summer. You have to get that return from work break action in the system to restart pay. And that's done on the job change e-par. Any questions about that?
So on the job change e-par, you just have to have 2 of the reasonings. So you would have the return from short work break and reappointment.
Yep, the question is, so on the job change e-par, you'll end up having multiple actions then, and the answer is yes. So you would have the one action to reappoint them, and then the RWB action to do the return from work break.
Because the EPA student is on a work break and they're in a primary department, and you're wanting to hire them in a secondary, you can still do that if their status is active and they're still going to get paid?
Yep, the question is if the primary department job is on short work break, can you still hire them in a secondary job and they'll still get paid? And the answer is yes. We have seen a couple issues with combinations of EPA and SPA due to TIM interface, but if it's straightforward EPA, no problem, because their HR status is active when they're on short work break. Any other questions? All right. All right, so that's it for short work break, and then I wanted to give everybody just a brief update on the department changes that we've put into the system for the new fiscal year. So we had a whole bunch of department name changes. Those have already been done, and you should see those updates in Connect Carolina. We have set up quite a few new departments. I think there ended up being about 300 or 400 new departments that were created this year. So those are set up and available in Connect Carolina right now. We have set up the default level 2 workflow for all of those departments on the HR side. So if you submit an action for a new department now, it's automatically going to route to school division level 2 HR and budget approvers for approval. But level 1 workflow, which is optional, would need to be requested for anybody if you want to use level 1 workflow in your division. Also, if you wanted to have any level 2 student approvers or student reviewers, those would need to be requested through InfoPort as well. We also had a large number of department inactivations. So we created reports to look for any active HR payroll data within the departments that have been inactivated. So we checked to see are there positions in those departments, are there jobs in those departments, is there tenure data in those departments, is there department budget table, which is funding data in those departments. And we sent those reports out to the school division HR officers and MOU leads, and they should be distributing those out for cleanup. And basically, we're going to keep rerunning those reports, and we're not going to inactivate any departments in the system until all of that data has been moved off. I'll just talk really briefly about security for the new departments. Have any of you heard of the department security tree? One person. Okay. So the department security tree is just a really, really high level. It's basically a representation of the university's organizational structure that drives what data our complex users have access to in Connect Carolina. So, really simple example. In the tree we have the Chancellor's office, then we have the Provost's office. Under the Provost we have the College of Arts and Sciences. Under the college we have the Department of Math. So we may have some users that only have math. We may have other users who have access at the College of Arts and Sciences level. And the way the tree works is that when you get access to one piece, you get access automatically to anything that rolls up to it. So anybody who we've given access to the college level automatically gets math too. So the new departments have been added into our existing tree structure. So that means if a new department was created in Arts and Sciences, everybody in the Dean's Office in Arts and Sciences already has access to it automatically. And we will be sending out reports listing who has access to the new departments, probably sometime in July to get the HR officers to sign off on those, since they were set up in the system after the security audit stuff. Department checklist. These are things that users need to do. Access request forms, we already talked about a little bit, so we do need to get access request forms if we want to set up any level 1 workflow or level 2 student approver or student reviewer for the new departments. And then data cleanup. So again, this is the report we sent out to the HR officers and the MOU leads, and data needs to be cleaned up before we actually inactivate the department in Connect Carolina. And for departments where it was just the name change, there's nothing anybody needs to do. Now that the name's changed, it's just changed. All right, so related to the department changes, we wanted to talk about a little bit about funding and compensation on transfer actions, because probably the biggest piece of the cleanup related to the department inactivations is that we need to move jobs and positions from one department to another. And there are a couple of gotchas about that. We wanted to highlight those. So really, really important when you're transferring an employee or a position from one department to another, you must update the funding. If you don't update the funding on that transfer action, it's going to end up getting charged to an old department. So you have to update the funding. This applies to both positions and job changes. So whether the employee is in a position or not, you still need to update the funding. And then just a reminder to never select the non-comp job side when you're using the hire part. If you do that, you are going to wipe out the employee's compensation. Any questions? All right, thank you guys very much. I'm going to turn it over to Corey Mims. Thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Corey, and I'm the lead employment consultant with the Office of Human Resources. And this morning I'm going to talk to you about the MOST meetings that we're having. So first, let's talk about what they are. So the MOST meetings are where we bring together individuals from HR and finance, or users from HR and finance, who have done or have performed the most of a particular type of transaction in the system. We do that because this is our opportunity, one, to recognize those individuals for that achievement, but also to get feedback, because these are users who have performed these transactions many times, and so we thought that this would be a good way to get feedback from those individuals. The first meeting we had was in May, and it was on the hire EPAR. And as you know, hires involve more than just hiring. They involve creating positions, and you hire someone, then maybe you need to extend their end date, and then maybe you need to put them on a break, or you need to terminate them. So the feedback that we got from the meeting was more than just around the hires. And what we'd like to do is share some of the discussion and insights that were provided, and share some recommendations that the group brought forward, as well as some reminders. But also know some of these things were some pain points, and for things that we don't have reminders or recommendations on, we'll add those to the list of enhancements and wish list items. Let's see. So we got feedback on the hires from these individuals, but please know that everyone's feedback is very valuable, and if you didn't attend, how many people did attend? Did anyone in here attend? Okay, one? Okay. But everyone's feedback is valuable, and so if you have feedback you want to share, here are some ways that you can do that. You can do that in these sessions. Anytime you come here, please share feedback on what's going well, what can be improved upon, what we need to look into further. You can also speak with the HR officers for your divisions. There's a subgroup of HR officers that are part of the business process subcommittee, and they review all kinds of feedback that comes up and changes before they take place. You can also speak with your liaisons, and the list will be available on the ccinfo.unc.edu site. You can also submit a help ticket. It's really helpful for us to have that information, that feedback, and any enhancements requests in the remedy system, because we will use that in order to take a look at our next set of enhancements and what we want to look at going forward. It's good to have that there as well. Okay, so I know that there was one person here from the meeting. I have to admit I was not at the meeting, and so if anything that I say is, if I miss a key point, please feel free to chime in, or if you want to add anything, please feel free to do that. So what's going well in the system? What's good? Having EPA and SPA in one system has been very helpful. So instead of visiting two systems to get information you need, it's all in one place. The more you use Connect Carolina, the easier it gets. So the more you're in the system, the more you're looking for things, the more you're submitting EPARs, the easier it gets. Connect Carolina can be easier than the systems we were using, and 90% of it works well. If you have any additional things that are going well in the system, please feel free to share them now or with us after the meeting. So some of the specific topics we discussed, that were discussed were around positions. So how many of you have created a new position in Connect Carolina? Several of you. Okay. So you probably know that if you create a new position and there is no approvals associated with the EPAR, then you can get your position number pretty quickly. You can submit it, you see that it executes to the integration broker, and if you wait a little bit, you can view the form immediately from that page and get your new position number. On the other hand, if it has to route through approvals, you have to wait, and the best way to pull up your position number after it's routed all the way through the approvals is to use the View and EPAR to look up those position numbers. The recommendation came up that if you're not using an Excel spreadsheet to track these EPARs, that could be helpful. So use an Excel spreadsheet, enter in the EPAR ID, what type of position it is when you entered it, and then you can go back and check the View and EPAR to see if it's executed and get that position number. In talking about when the position numbers are created, it was mentioned that the copy feature is only available after the position has been created, so after that EPAR executes. So we don't get position numbers when you submit the EPARs. That could be, that's problematic when you have maybe 15 positions that you need to create one after the next, so you have to create the position, wait for it to execute, and then you can use the copy feature. It was also brought up that student originators don't have the ability to use the copy feature at this time. So some things you can do, you could, if you have, for those of you that can use the copy feature, if you know that you have another position within your department or organization, you could always use that while you're waiting for the other one to execute. So if you have an SPA student position that's very similar, you could always pick that one instead of waiting for the one that you've just submitted to generate a position number. And don't forget that SPA position numbers for students and temps can be reused in Connect Carolina. They're not abolished like they were in HRIS, so created and then abolished when the person left. So you can reuse these over and over again. And you can use InfoPort to find out which positions are vacant. You can go in and you can specify that you want to see SPA or SPA students, and then you can request positions that are filled or vacant. And you can export that data and have all those vacant positions available to you, so you can continue to use them instead of creating positions over and over again. It was also mentioned that position EPARs have too many approvals in certain cases. Please know that student approvals are optional. And those can be revisited and revised by talking. If you talk with your HR officers, you can have a workflow discussion, and it may be that you can limit the number of approvals that are required and speed up the process. The goal is to streamline. So if you feel that there are too many in your department, have a conversation with your HR officer, and they can look into reducing the number if appropriate. Any questions or feedback on? Yes.
As far as using the basic positions, does that include positions that predate Connect Carolina?
It only includes the ones that were fed over and were active at the time that we transitioned, but yes, it does. And the question was, sorry, I forgot that. The question was, can we use positions that predated Connect Carolina? And so for those of you that are on the webinar, and the answer is that yes, you can, as long as they were active when they came over, they would have fed over. Other questions or feedback? There's also a lot of discussion around the higher EPAR. It was brought up that there are timing issues around approvals for secondary appointments. So if you are hiring an individual into a secondary appointment, your higher EPAR routes to the primary department for approvals. And so it was mentioned that in some cases, the primary department didn't get the approvals in time, and so the individual was not, did not show up in Connect Carolina, couldn't code hours, and maybe missed a pay period. Departments also have inadvertently terminated employees accidentally. So a department, as you know, if an individual is transferring from Department A to Department B initiates the higher transfer action, and Department A does not need to do anything because they'll automatically be moved into Department B. But what's happened in some cases is when it's future dated, Department A will come along and submit a termination action. So the termination action goes on top of the transfer and then terminates them out of the system. So there's some timing issues that were brought up. What could be helpful is to make sure that you're in communication with individuals in your own department as well as the old department when you are transferring individuals or when you're hiring individuals into secondary appointments. Don't hesitate to send out that email and say, I noticed that you're on the list of approvers. Can you approve this action as soon as possible? There was also related to breaks in service because an individual will be terminated and then a department will rehire on top of that. If you have a break in service, it's not truly a break in service, or you have an issue with the timing or someone being inadvertently terminated, please don't hesitate to contact the help desk. I can tell you that I have fixed several people who were terminated and then rehired when there shouldn't have been a break in service. So if there really shouldn't be one, reach out to the help desk, and if you have any concerns about someone being terminated when they shouldn't have been, let us know. With regard to positions, there was talk about there being too many approvals. However, when it came to hires, there was a discussion around how that workflow, that extensive workflow was being utilized. And some individuals found that when they routed actions to other departments, it helped them avoid exceeding 1.0 FTE in the system. So they were able to get that information in advance. Someone found out that a student was graduating. So the department that the higher action got routed to notified the department that the individual was graduating, so couldn't be hired as a student. It's also helpful in these instances to know that someone's transferring versus terminating. Going back to that second bullet point, in some cases, you're going to know if your employee is transferring to another department. In other cases, maybe the student or the temp doesn't communicate that information to you. So when you get the action through the workflow, it's a good indicator that you know someone is transferring versus needing to be terminated. Some people had retro and future dated actions cause issues in law logics, and I just want you to know that that's a known issue and it's being looked into right now. Yes?
One of the things we've seen on the help desk quite often is issues with people using the wrong option as far as on the hire, whether they're adding a secondary or, actually moving the person to another position. Speak to that.
Sure. So Teresa said one of the things that they've had come up on the help desk is departments that aren't sure when someone is needing a secondary job or transferring from one job to the next. So on the higher EPAR, on the
first page where you're entering in the effective date of the hire and the position or other information about the hire, at the very bottom, if this person is a current employee on campus, at the very bottom there's a checkbox, and it's called the Edit Existing Job checkbox. If you leave that checkbox blank, the action to hire is going to give them a secondary job. So when that checkbox is blank, it gives them another position on top of their existing position or appointment. If you check the box, you're going to be provided with a list of all their active info records or jobs or appointments on campus. And if they're moving from one to the next, that's when you would select which position or appointment they're being moved out of to go into your position. So you leave the box blank if you want them to have a secondary job. You check the box if you're transferring them from an existing job to a new job.
It's defaulted to blank.
It's defaulted to blank, yes. Yes.
Going back to helping to know if a student is graduating, is there a list that we can generate within the department to, or maybe an info port to know whether or not students are graduating? Because at the end of the spring semester, I had students who had graduated, and I wasn't aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be useful or helpful to be able to figure that out.
Okay. So the question was, is there a way to figure out if a student is going to be graduating or not? I, at this point, am not aware of one. I know that that data is held in Campus Solutions, and it's not accessible.
We can take that as an enhancement.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So it was said that we could take that as an enhancement request and take a look to see if that information can be provided. Any other questions about the hire section? Yes.
So in the old world, if somebody graduated sometime over the summer, they would magically switch from student tips to temps.
Right.
What happens now?
Okay. So the question is, in the old world, in HRIS, when someone graduated, the system would automatically take them out of their SPA student job and put them in an SPA temporary job. That is not happening. The system does not know to move someone from one employee group or position to another. So we would ask that departments transfer them into an SPA temporary position if they have graduated and are going to continue to work. And then at that point, that's when you would submit a waiver in people admin that talks about the UNC employee, or excuse me, the current UNC student continuing to graduate or continuing to work beyond graduation. And then you get a position number and a vacancy ID to transfer them from their SPA student position into the SPA temporary position. And that's when we ask you to do a background check and ensure that their salary is at least 1061. Good question. And we can take a look, down the line to see if there's a better way to help identify this. If there's a question on
from the webinar. How long after a student graduates can we use the waiver reason in PA?
So the question is, how long after a student graduates can we use the waiver reason in people admin? It is the recommendation that those waivers are used prior to the student graduating, because in order for them to continue work, they really, one, should have had a background check, and two, we should be paying them at the appropriate amount. But we do realize that people are still getting used to submitting that. Sometimes they don't know that a student has graduated, and so we try and be as flexible as possible, but we really ask if departments to submit that prior to. We continue to look at them throughout May and then on a case-by-case basis following May. Is there a follow-up question? Or? Okay, good. Teresa, yes?
Yes, so you mentioned something about the people that were graduating.
Yes.
If they are just a student and not enrolled in the summer, are you supposed to transfer or do you leave alone? I think that's what a lot of people have questions about, because the system automatically do that based on their enrollment. Right.
So the question is, what about the students who are not graduating and might not be working over the summer? What do you do with them? So this is a good example of where we went to the business process subcommittee. This is one of the things we brought forward, because in Connect Carolina we have the flexibility to leave those individuals in their SPA student assistant positions over the summer, they don't code hours, they remain active, so when they come back in the fall, or maybe they work the second part of the summer session, whatever the case may be, they're active and ready to go. So you don't have to do the paperwork over again, you don't have to re-I-9 or anything like that. So unlike HRIS where they would need to come off payroll, we can keep them on in their SPA student assistant position through the summer, even if they're not taking the summer session, as long as they are enrolled for classes in the fall. Yes?
Would that mean that their expected job end date would be, I guess, some date in the fall?
Yes, so the expected job end date for an SPA student assistant could be sometime in the fall, it could be after the fall semester. But you would want to make sure, because SPA students and SPA temporaries will be terminated when their expected end date comes up. So if it's someone you want to continue through the fall, I wouldn't have their expected end date be in June or July. Yeah, go ahead and push it out to a date that you think would give you enough time to know if they're going to return or not. And then if they don't, you can submit the termination action. Yes?
How long does it take for the students, like once their expected end date comes, how long does it take for the system to make them inactive? Because like I've had students that work for other departments, and their expected end date might have been like the middle of May, but then like I try to hire them at the end of May. They're still active. I had students that ended with us right at the end of May, and then the middle of June, they're still active, like other departments are calling. So I thought it was like maybe an automatic thing, like they terminated because I didn't send them out. So they're like a lag in the system.
So you are actually touching on another slide that I have, because that was brought up as well, where some students were able to log hours after their expected end date, or they were remaining active in TIM after their expected end date. So the question was, when can departments expect to see that they've been made inactive in the system? And I'll speak to it in a little bit as well, but we have auto terms, but the auto terms are really being handled manually. So there, with the influx of students and temporaries leaving in May, there was a bit of a lag time between when those individuals were actually terminated, which is why they stayed active a little bit longer than normal. But the expectation is that those individuals will be terminated in the system on their expected end date. And they should be made inactive after they then feed to TIM. Yes?
So the STA student assistant, if we give them a further out end date, it used to be, and I may be incorrect about this, that you were only supposed to do a year at a time. Is that still the case, or is that really true? Or?
So the question is, at one point it used to be that you should only appoint SPA students for a year. And is that still true? I would have to look into that further. I have seen departments do multiple years.
I know you can now.
Right. In the system, it wouldn't allow you to do that. So I don't know if that practice is still continuing on, but I think since the system allows you to go beyond that, that you can, but I can look into that further to make sure that's...
Work study students or SBA students as well. Aren't we supposed to end the work study students?
So yes. So as far as work study students go, they're handled a little bit, they're handled differently than your other SPA students. Those individuals must be terminated, or if you wanted to continue their employment through the summer, they'd have to be transferred into an SPA student position.
It would be great if, because we have so many returning in the fall, you have to do, the I-9s every again since there was that break.
Yes. So, in fact, that feedback also came up at the session as far as looking into work break. You know how the EPA has a short work break. Are there options to have short work break for SPA students, work study students as well, which we can definitely look into. Work study, that'd be up to the work study office. There's some very specific rules around funding, and so we'd need to look into that further, but we certainly can.
But they're still doing, the work study office is still doing returning for the work study students, right?
Work study is not. That is being handled by the help desk and BAs. So that's the manual part of it. Right, no.
I got an email last week about two of our work study students
saying that I needed to term them, and I thought they were auto-termed.
Okay, so Teresa.
They weren't in the system. They weren't in TAM or anything before, so they had to have been taken out.
Okay, so the feedback was given that there were 2 work-study students that followed up with the department in to notify them that they needed to be terminated because they were still showing active. Can you send me the names of those people so we can look into it?
I talked to what's his name at work study, and he said no, they've been termed. But I got an email from the faculty member they had been working for, saying she had received something from work study, saying that they needed to be termed.
Okay, so
well, they should have been termed.
Okay, so I see that other people have had that as well.
Yeah.
They were receiving communication from the work study office that someone needed to be.
They were sending communications to the faculty member, and the faculty member contacted me, and I said, well, they're supposed to have already been termed, and they're not showing up in TIM. So I contacted the work study office, and they said, oh yeah, they were termed. So I don't know, there's some kind of snafu in there.
Okay, we can take a look at that. Yes, Teresa.
I was just going to mention, there were 1,300 students that had to be trained in the first few weeks of May. So there was a little bit of lag with that because, again, that's some of the manual process. And between the VAs and the help desk doing it. So, but if you have someone that needs to be terminated and you don't, you can always reach out to us. We're happy to do it. Or you can also terminate them yourself.
Right. So Teresa, and I'm repeating myself for the people on the webinar. Teresa said that there were 1,300 individuals that needed to be terminated the first few weeks of May, which is why there was a lag time, because it's a good chunk of people that need to be terminated, which is being handled by the help desk and the BAs. And certainly, if you need someone terminated, you can go ahead and submit that termination action, or you can reach out to the help desk and have them get that termination action taken care of.
I think a problem with the lag is that students are still able to fill the time and spend on the work their position. That was a problem that even though this lag time for the other terms happens, they're able to fill the time.
Okay. For the work study. So it sounds like the work study students were coding time after the expected end date for work study, which is then the work study probably got charged for that and then was following up to see. So, but we can work with we can look into that further. Thank you. Other questions, feedback before we move on? Okay. Thanks for all of that information. It's great to have. So we're going to edit existing job. The feedback was given that it would be helpful to see position numbers in the search results when you want to select someone to take an action on. So how many of you have multiple, or have an employee that has multiple jobs in the same department? Anyone? Yeah. So when you pull up that person, you pull up Jane Smith, if she has 5 jobs all in the same department, everything looks the same. You don't have any, other than the info record, any way to identify which position you want to take some sort of action on. So that feedback was given, and we can definitely see if this can be added as a column in the search results so you can more easily identify which employee record you want to take action on. Here's where it would be helpful to have the work study functionality for work study students or any type of student. And please know we will be looking into ways to tweak the process to make it more simplified going forward. And now that we've had the experience of doing it, and then we will also look at other employee groups to see if we can include them in this functionality. Yes?
I would just like to add that for our purposes, it would be helpful to have not just the position number search column, but also for the job specification for those appointments that do not have positions associated with them, but still would help us to identify out of the multiple jobs which one is which.
Okay, so the feedback was given that it would also be good to have the type of job classification, so it would be helpful to identify which is which for people that aren't in positions. So if you have somebody who is a faculty member and they have multiple appointments, it would be good to know that information so you can identify them. Yeah.
I'm not sure job classification would work, but some other type of title, their working title, because they'll have an associate professor or they'll have a director or they have different positions, and so if you use the title of the position, that would help. And so, because I could have 3 EPA faculty classifications, but they have 3 different titles.
Okay.
And 3 different purposes.
Okay. So we can take a look at what potential columns we can pull in and which would be most helpful in unique identifiers to see what would work there.
So just a comment about that, though. You can't add new columns.
Sorry, right.
We have a finite number that we can use. And also they have to be the same across all the different EPAR forms. So you have to take into consideration what each form needs. So it's kind of a pick and choose how to get the right fields out there. So we'll probably run that by the business process subcommittee and kind of take a good look at that across all the forms.
So Vicki gave the feedback that it's not just adding new columns. The number of columns that we have existing is the max that we can use, and we need to see what will work best over all search results and all EPARs. Okay. Supervisor and reports to. It's a good example of when supervisor shows up or reports to shows up, or I want to provide an example of that because it depends on the situation. Or reports to is on a position, meaning that reports to, if you have someone and you have them reporting to someone and you utilize that field, it's a position number. So reports to is identified by position number. And supervisor is on the job and it's identified by the employee ID. And these 2 fields don't show up on the same form. You either use one or the other. So an example is if you have an SPA student and they report to an individual who is in a position, so let's say they report to me. When the position is being created, you would enter in my position number into the reports to field on that position EPAR. Then when they're hired, I would show up as their reports to. Then if I left and someone took my place, then that individual would be the person in the reports to, because it's based on the position number, so that requires less work on your part if someone leaves. It's always assigned to that position number. However, if you have a faculty member that's in an appointment and does not have a position number, when you create the position, you would leave reports to blank on the position EPAR, and instead, when you hire that person via the hire EPAR, you would have the supervisor ID box, and that's where you would enter in their EMPL ID. Yes?
So if we have somebody that we need to change both of those for, do we need to wait for one actually to be completed before we do the other one, or can we do them both at the same time?
So the question is, if you have someone where you need to change both of those for them, can you complete the actions all at the same time, or do you have to do one action at a time? Because of the way the system writes and updates Connect Carolina, because of the way the EPAR writes and updates Connect Carolina, you have to do one at a time. So you would start one action, let it execute to the system, and then pick up the next action. What happens when you do both of them at the same time is one will write through first, and then when the second one comes along, it sees that there's conflicting data, and that's when you get stuck at the integration broker. As with a lot of actions that require 2 EPARs, you would always want to do one first, let it execute before you pick up the second one. Yes?
Is it better to do the position first and then the job?
I would do the position first because you have to remove the, well, I guess it depends on the situation.
Most of the time I found if I do the position, let's say it's through
yes.
certain things in the position will write to the job.
Right.
Then I can see what's written to the job and
yes.
change it.
Yes. So I would agree. I think that updating the position first, letting it execute, and then handling it on job is the best way to go for those changes. But I stumbled over this a bit, so did what I say make sense? Is it? Okay. Yes?
So for the purposes of the PMCA ratings, so supervisor fees to import and not reports to, like who would be, like what I would see for employees that supervise?
They should both feed over to InfoPort, yes.
Yeah, for the performance management stuff, InfoPort should be formatted either way, so regardless of whether it reports to a supervisor. Okay.
So the question was for position management and the ratings that are coming up will reports to or supervisor ID feed over to InfoPort, and now both of those are feeding over to InfoPort. If you find that that's not the case, let us know. If the position's vacant, then the department rep can enter the ratings, or it will roll up to the next.
What will show the position reports?
It will show nothing. It'll just be a blank. It'll be blank in the column. But if the role is vacant and there are positions for people that report to them, then the department rep can enter the ratings, or the next level supervisor, those individuals will roll up to their access for them to enter. Other questions before we move on? So change in employment status EPAR, these are your terminations and placing people on leave. So we did talk already a little bit about other terminations, which are really being handled manually at this point. Those are for SPA temporary and SPA students and are based on the expected end date in the job data. It was mentioned that an alert to the departments or the supervisors would be helpful, that there have been situations where a student or temp is working and everything seems to be going smoothly. The supervisor thinks they're continuing, but then all of a sudden the person's locked out of TIM and can't go in and code hours. Right now there are no system-generated emails to notify supervisors or departments. So what we would recommend is using the expected end date report in InfoPort to track the time frame and when individuals have their expected end date coming up. You can share this information with supervisors so they can let you know if they want to continue someone's employment or not. And again, just having proactive communication. So using the report and having proactive communication with supervisors to make sure individuals stay employed and active if necessary. And there's the SPA employees logging hours after their termination date. Again, think that for May was because of the lag time. So it should be up to date going forward. And as soon as that action hits the system and writes to TIM, the individual will be locked out of TIM and won't be able to make any edits. So when does TIM get updated? If an action is executed by 3 p.m. on a workday, then it will be imported to TIM at 5 p.m. that evening. The only exception is the first Tuesday of a biweekly pay period. Those actions have to be executed by 11 a.m. In order for them to be imported that evening. Otherwise, they would go the next day. And I believe that there was a helpful communication that went out to TIM administrators maybe last week from TIM support that has a lot of helpful details about effective dates, hires, and terms. Just a few miscellaneous items. There was it appears that when multiple windows of Connect Carolina are open in the same browser, that sometimes the system can act a little strange. And where we have really found that is if you have the EPAR tool open in multiple browser windows. So you can have multiple windows open. You can have an EPAR going and then job data and position data tabs open. But what you want to not do is have multiple EPARs open or multiple viewing an EPAR, working on an EPAR, approving an EPAR. That's where the system will start to close you out of other windows. If you have other instances where this is happening but it's not because of multiple EPARs, let us know. It's been difficult to only have 2 individuals that can update Social Security numbers. The access was limited to 2 because of the sensitive data that those individuals can see and can update. So we can take this as a pain point, but at this time I don't know that we'll have additional users that we can add. There was feedback expressed on limitations for the basic users and student originators, that the type of actions that can be performed and the employee groups that they can be performed on, the limitations on what can be viewed. If someone's out and someone handles a transaction on their behalf for a basic or student originator, when they come back, they can't then pick up that EPAR and view it if someone else starts it. So that was, those were some pain points that were mentioned. Right now, our recommendation is to work with your complex users or work with individuals in the approval path who have access to that information. The other thing you can do is use the UNC Employee Information link. I don't know how many of you have used that, but it provides a lot of helpful information, and it is open. The security is open, so you can see all employees across campus, and you can find out information such as their status, if they're active or inactive, if they're regular or temp. You can see what their FTE is on each employee record, and you can see their expected job end date. We're looking at adding position number there too, so you can have that information to view as well. It's not there yet. And then lastly, you can use the complex users have access to the multiple job summary link, and this will provide you more information with regard to pay rates and some additional detail if you need to see that, and you can access that as well for information. Yes?
My director recently asked me if you want to know every one of the type positions that we fund, and finding out, okay, we fund X% of their FTE, was probably to go through about 3 reports to collect what the home department was, which of our accounts we were paying for their salary, and what percentage of the FTE that account was paying. Is there any way to consolidate that?
So the question is there a way to consolidate so you don't have to touch as many reports to find out how many of a certain employee type is paid off of funds, and then by what percent? Is that correct, based on FTE? We can definitely take that forward and raise that to.
So I would suggest bringing that request to your MOU lead, because the finance group is looking at all the reports around funding, so I would filter that up to your MOU lead.
Okay. So the finance group is looking at reports for funding, and so the recommendation is to bring that up to your MOU lead.
That's the biggest need in the system.
It's the biggest need in the system right now? Okay.
Funding for people.
Funding for people. Okay. So definitely then raise that up the chain, and even if you think someone in this room might be doing it because it was talked about, you should also raise it up the chain to your MOU. So it's definitely.
If anybody found a good way to do that, let me know.
And if anyone has found a good way to do it, please share that helpful information. Are there any questions that this ends the feedback and discussion that was held at the meeting? Are there any questions or any feedback? Yes.
My feedback is it sounds like this most meeting was really good. Are you going to have more of those?
Yes, so the feedback is that it sounds like the most meeting was really helpful and went well, so are there going to be more? My understanding is there will be more on various areas within the system, so probably a position, terminations, leave. So yes, you can expect to see more. And more report outs from those meetings.
And we should do it on finance.
We are doing them on Friday.
Okay.
Yeah.
And finance is doing them as well. Making sure they know what's being discussed there. Any other feedback or information you want to share? If you do, remember you have ways to share that feedback, and we always stick around after the meetings. If you don't want to bring it up in a meeting, you can always grab one of us before you leave or at a future meeting. Okay, thank you. Didn't leave much time for the next section. Okay. That's right.
Okay, so just real quick, I know we're almost out of time, but I wanted to just run through a few new things that are available on the CC Info site. So they're on the CBT site. So how many of you have taken some of the computer-based training sessions? Great, that's great. So we have been working to improve that whole experience because those CBTs, they grew and grew, and we got more and more really quickly, and it made it a little bit hard to get around. So we have reorganized the computer-based training site, hopefully make it a little bit easier to find the information on the page, and then also if people are trying to get access,
it wasn't always easy to see which computer-based trainings you needed for which access, so we tried to organize it that way. So just real quick, FYI. And we're also now letting you know up front what you're getting yourself into time-wise. So there's a little column that says how many minutes each CBT. And you know, a 10-minute live classroom training session feels like nothing, but a 10-minute computer-based training session feels like a lifetime. We know that. That's why we try to keep them pretty short so you can parse it out. So also wanted to let you know that there's a new computer-based training called the HR Overview. So it gives you just some high-level concepts that are really important, and we're going to work it in so that, we're hoping to work it in so that everyone's required to take this session because it just talks about some key concepts that everybody needs to know on the HR side. So that's out there. You guys are welcome to take any of the sessions that are out there, by the way. Wanted to let you know that we're adding some more approver CBTs. So originally we had one that kind of introduced the process, and now we're taking a little bit of a deeper dive into each EPAR form. And that's because this is really the only exposure that approvers have before they get into the system. So we're building out that training. So we have 3 new ones out there for them. We're reworking thanks to our subject matter experts, we're reworking some of the student originator CBTs. So several are done, but several more are in the works. We're adding a couple of new ones. So again, we got lots of good questions and input from you guys and from all over campus about questions and things, missing information that we could add. And so we're building those out. So those are getting a little bit longer. There's a little bit more information in there. We're reworking the HR rep guide. So again, all the questions that came up, if we were able to capture them, we try to build the answers into the guide. So it won't help you guys. You guys are off and running now, although it might be worth glancing through there to see what additional information is in there. But we're building that out so for people new HR reps, we'll have that information right up front. And again, you guys are welcome to take a look. Also, we're doing a standalone student approver guide. So originally we thought we could use some of the information from the HR rep guide, but really it is going to be its own standalone guide directed to straight to people who do student actions. So that is, we're waiting for sign off really, so it's very close. How many people have visited the online help? Yay, okay, a few people, some people, okay. Just wanted to remind people because it's kind of quietly in Connect Carolina and not everybody has noticed that it's there. But there's a help link on many of the pages in Connect Carolina, and if you click that link, this pops up and it's searchable. So all the information, new information that we've been adding to the various guides are in there. The information is in there, and it's searchable. You can type in a keyword, and it'll bring up all the topics that relate to that keyword. So just wanted to remind you that that's out there. It's also so there it is in Connect Carolina. It's not on the home page, so if you sign in, there's no help link, which it makes us sad, but that's the way it is. So all the rest of the pages, you'll see that help link available. And then also on the resources page, I can't let a meeting go by without showing you something about this website, but on CC Info Resources, you'll see a Web Help button, and that takes you there as well. One last thing, just as a favor, so if you would help spread the word that, not related to resources, but if you have a new basic originator, student originator, or approver that you hear is about to get access, if you can ask them to go ahead and take their computer-based training, it would be a huge help, because then we can just whip their access requests along much more quickly, whereas otherwise we have to email them and say, please take these sessions, and it sometimes takes them a while. And it's kind of a manual process for us right now, so this just really helps speed things along. So it's a complete favor to us, but it does mean that they get their access request processed a little more quickly. So if you guys will spread the word, we'd really appreciate that. Okay, so I think we have like not any time at all, but some of us will stay around. So if you have additional questions, come find us, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have. Thanks again so much for coming out, and we'll see you next month. Oh, I do want to mention that, just notice that we did change the time and date of the July meeting, and that was we're hoping to not conflict with the med school has some pretty major meetings, and that's about a fourth of our user group, so we're trying to accommodate, sync up with their schedule. So just note that
date and time has moved for the next meeting. So it is out on the CC Info website, the new time is. All right, thanks you guys. Thanks for coming out.